Margaret Coe. I'm here at my show at Clarke Gallery, and I just wanted to give some context to this show. It's all pieces painted during the pandemic. So it represents 3 years of work, with the possible exception that there happened to be about 4 or 5 of these paintings that were started years prior to that, but were never completed except during this period of time. So that all the work was at least completed. Most of it I began and completed it during the pandemic. Why that's significant is that I'm a painter who for the last quite a few years has traveled to Europe almost every spring or summer, and I've gone with my paints, and so I've painted there, done watercolors. One time I just did drawings, but for the most part I'm there I go there specifically for painting trips. And I, in fact, had a painting trip scheduled for Italy. It was like 2.5 weeks at an Airbnb in 2 different hill towns. And I scheduled that in 2019. But as soon as I saw the pandemic the COVID was moving to Italy, northern Italy, which is where I was going to go, I thought, well, by the time I'm there, it's full-fledged. If I'm traveling by myself and I get sick, at an Airbnb, there's no room service. So I just thought, that's it. And I didn't have a feeling of loss because I have been doing painting trips to Europe for quite a few years. And I always had in the back of my mind, because I live on a piece of property in Laurel Hill Valley that has a little field in it, and it has woods behind it, which I adore. I've always thought that at some point in my life I would follow Thoreau's advice and just have some solitude and be in a single landscape. And I always knew that was of interest to me. But this seemed like the universe, because the pandemic was saying, this happens to be the time. So it was that was the time chosen by circumstances rather than by myself. So the paintings are really about that period of time. And they're about the temporal aspect, the fact that they're all painted in this period of time. It's a little less than 3 years. The material thing is that there are a couple of trips that I took, one to the river, Calapooya River, one to the coast, where I did some painting, a little bit of painting, but primarily it was a time of complete isolation, or just, I was in touch with my dog, but we didn't even get together because we were trying not to have to get COVID. And so it was real solitude, and it was spending time out in my field, different places that I would clear that are just beyond my property, being in the woods, and then a great deal of reading. I was reading a lot of the early Christians, probably material most people do not read, but some of the, very interesting is some of the Desert Fathers who became sainted later or something, were very much into solitude and into the kind of message that they could get about everything. And much of it was about the discipline. These writings that they wrote would help other young monks learn how to control their minds, so that they're keeping a purity, so that they're not perhaps entertaining evil thoughts, in their mind, that they're really getting right to the source of what they wanted to make available. They wanted that connection, their soul, to connect with God. And that required a very pure soul. So a lot of the austerities, of which I can't say that I have followed that aspect of it, but in terms of like I eat every day, and things. But that very idea of being focused on that kind of a contemplation, and they just wanted God. They weren't looking for other adventures, around with friends or anything. And I felt that this was not the same thing they're doing, but it was very much about my being less of an ego-centered type person, with my art, but just a vehicle, through which the Spirit could talk. And of course, that's so consistent with solitude and being in nature and being around painting, actually painting plants and trees and things that are completely familiar with you, or maybe you're looking at in a different way because you're spending the time doing that. That is what I was about. That's what this show is about. This is the result of that. So, and I felt like one of the things I achieved was a kind, especially when I was painting outdoors a lot and painting maybe just a part of the painting that I wanted to, maybe I painted the part of it inside and then I just really wanted to observe a thistle or observe a branch, and that during that time, I think I hit what I would consider an absolute concentration, an absolute tight focus, and that is, I won't compare it to the Desert Fathers, in terms of how deeply they went, but I think it was appropriate for an artist who really wants to have a subject of nature and actually to spend time with it, to relate something about it that goes beyond just something trivial or just let's see if I can draw this or something like that. Just I did want to go more deeply into that subject. So that is what I did. This piece that we're standing by, which I called The Inside of Tomorrow, it's just one element of it, which is the lower part where you see the fallen tree and these sort of sucker-like branches coming up and then the other branches kind of meandering off. That was one of the area right behind my back field, the woods, was one of my favorite fallen trees, just the way and I drew it 3 different times with ink, and I actually even framed it up and, the drawings, but it was so complex, not that you can necessarily tell in this painting, but the fascination was that the branches, the way they're so complex that you couldn't tell a given branch which tree it came from unless you drew it. Sometimes that involved walking over and seeing what it's connected to. But I very much love that. For some reason, I'm really struck with that energy, perhaps because that's very characteristic of the kind of thing that's in my environment. Hello again. This time I'm standing in front of this painting, which, what did I name this? Revival. Okay. This painting was one of the paintings that I actually had started a few years prior to this period of time when I'm painting. It followed a trip to Scotland, and during that Scotland trip, I drew, and I was actually, this was a castle area, and there was a chapel just opposite to where. So I was drawing a chapel over here, and one of the people that was on the, on this trip, a woman who's a librarian, Cheryl, took a photograph. She took a few photographs of me over the, painting, and this is one of them. I was just sitting on this rock, and I was actually facing this way. Well, she sent me the photo, and I really liked the photo. It tells what I'm doing, but I just like the sort of gesture of it, that sort of quality, the way the light hit my boots, and so I decided to include it. It was actually the very same location I was painting. There was this castle over here, and but in painting it, I took a lot of liberties. There's actually had been a tree here, which I ended up thinking I didn't even want. But I had this central area, and actually there was just a sketch by another artist that I had noticed that I had really liked, which is just a sketch of this. It might have been from the imagination. It might have been from an actual town that had quite a few churches in it. But I thought, well, I'd like to use that because I actually didn't want a literal sort of, this is a certain church, this is a certain, I just like the rhythm and for the central area and it also happens to be one of the things that I most like about Europe. I like these medieval towns where the churches are the highest building, that sort of thing. I like that so much. I'm just so attracted to it. It just seems so organic, like the structure of course, it's around. Life was around the church, so there was, which I find attractive in certain ways. Of course, maybe not in practical terms, but I like to center my own life, my thinking, my choices around. I just reverence, I think, and so anyway, I've been attracted to that, and so I put that in, and then I've had the painting, actually had it in a show with some other things that were based on drawings that I did in Scotland, and then I took it, I said, I do not like this painting. I hated the tree. The tree was there, true, but just because something's there does not make it a good choice for a composition. And of course this castle, or this was more defined, and this, I liked what's going on here, though I did paint in more. I kept imagining more church steeples, because one reason is that I like the movement. I wanted to have this vertical movement at the end, and so I just made, so I played with that. But what I would, it's this painting, even though I volunteered to speak about it, it's not something that I fully understand. To me, it seems really pretty mysterious. I think it runs pretty deep for me, and it never went through my logical mind. It was, that sort of thing. But I think that what I had done when I brought this out of storage, and I thought the only things I really like in this painting is this figure sitting on a rock, and I like this little medieval town. Nothing else in the painting appeals to me. So I just got in with, oh my God, brushes, rollers, all kinds of things, and just painted some earthy colors that I tend to like, and I paint this, and I blotted, which you'll see that's one of my techniques that I do lately is blotting. And then I blotted this because I really didn't want a focus there. What I ended up with, I'm painting all this, but I'm retaining the focus that I told you, the only two things I liked in it, the figure sitting here drawing, and the background of a medieval town. That's it. And I didn't want anything else to compete with that, and yet I did want to set the atmosphere. To me, I feel very attached to this. I feel like it's saying something to me, or it's somehow important to me, that goes beyond a specific trip to a specific part of Europe. It's just something so it's really hard to talk about its meaning or anything, but I think but it is significant that I took a painting that had a tree and some realistic stuff, painted out everything except the two things that I wanted to be realistic, and the rest of it is texture.
you.